Okay, section 7A. Let's move on to Google Analytics and let's talk a little bit about how it works before we get into the reports. So, everything is really captured today if you're not aware of it. Every little mouse movement, when your mouse is hovering on top of objects, when you're scrolling, every bit of that is captured. If you're starting to type information into a form and you back it off and erase it, it's still all being captured. If you guys ever see a pop-up from 4C come up anytime you enter a website, and I'm sure you have, again, just let it be known that most likely your every move is going to be tracked within that browser. Because again, what they're going to do at the end of the session is going to ask you to rank your experience on the website. And if you do not give it a good experience, more than likely they're going to play back your mouse movements and what you were doing to see what might have happened and what might have caused that bad experience. Again, with respect to Google, just want you guys to know, obviously there's a free version, but keep in mind there's issues with, how many how much site traffic they can handle for you. So until about 3 years ago, there wasn't an option for high traffic sites, and therefore they would not guarantee performance. Now they do have a paid version that you can use, and I believe it's a flat fee. You guys can click through of $100,000 for oh goodness, I don't. It's over for over 1 million. Hits or calls, basically. So you guys can click through and see a little bit more detail on that. But I did want you to know that there is a premium paid version out there. The other web tracking software that's available besides Google Analytics is Adobe Site Catalyst. So they are huge. They are probably the Lexus of web tracking tools. Most of your Fortune 500 companies will use those. And I would wager at a minimum, just to get them in the door and to start using them, you're talking at least $1 million to get things rolling. You got FireClicks, you got Web Trends, Website Story, Core Metrics. Those are more economical, probably under $100,000 a year. Again, just showing you kind of some of those that are out there. Again, you can see Google is definitely up there with the leaders, and so is Adobe. So those are the two major players in the leader box. With respect to Clickstream data, what can we get? As I said, pretty much everything. We can understand the source of our visitors, where do they came from, what are the search terms that brought them to the website, how long are they spending on the site, where are they entering, where are they exiting, what PDF files are they downloading, what videos are they watching, how much of the video are they watching. Everything is basically captured with JavaScript today. So let's talk about how it works. So you sit down at your computer and you type in www.umsl.edu. It's going to send a request to the web server, whoever is hosting the UMSL web files, and they will start transmitting back all the files and the images and the flash, whatever is comprised on that particular page. So keep in mind that if that page has 5 images and 1 flash file, then that is going to be a request for 7 objects, basically. Your computer is requesting 7 things. The web server will send back 7 things. The HTML code, the 5 images, and the 1 flash file. Those will be recorded in what's called a log file. The web server will record those in a log file, so it knows everything that was requested by every visitor. So as you can imagine, those log files can get pretty large. Okay, and again, in some cases for data analysis, you might want to have access to those log files to do deeper analysis. Now, what's going to happen is, as the page starts to load on your computer, it's going to hit some JavaScript code that Google or Adobe gave you to paste on that page. And once the computer hits that code, the JavaScript is going to execute and it's going to transmit information to the Google data center or the Adobe data center. And then that's how we know that you hit the page, we know at what time it was, and then if you start clicking on a PDF download, there'll be JavaScript code wrapped around that. That will execute, send that information to Google. When you go to another page, that page will load, we'll know you hit that, that gets sent to Google, and all that data kind of gets rolled up into reports, which is what we'll look at shortly. So the pros and cons of page tagging, want to make sure you understand a few things. So not affected by page caching. So you guys know if you were just on the UMSL website 5 minutes ago and you came back again, more than likely it's going to quickly pull it out of cache, which is the computer's memory. So that will still trigger a page hit, because what's going to happen is it comes out of the computer's memory and it loads on your screen. It's still going to hit the JavaScript code and therefore ping the data center to let it know that you opened that page. You can capture events like PDF file downloads or exit links, or videos that are played, or calculators you're playing with, but you do have to wrap special JavaScript code around it, and we use what's called the onClick command, and those are typically tracked as events, not as page views. Okay, but you do have to have special JavaScript. So just to understand page to page and how long you've been on a page, that's just standard JavaScripting. You don't need anything special. But to capture PDF downloads, playing with a calculator, clicking on an exit link, that you do require special JavaScript code. Some of the cons here: a quick bounce might not register. So if you start to go to DrakeDirect.com and type it in, the page just barely starts to load, but you hit the back button before the page was able to trigger the JavaScript, then we don't know that you actually started to come there. Again, keep in mind, roughly, I think it's roughly closer to 1% now. Guys, I need to change that. Roughly about 1% of computers have JavaScripting turned off. If the data center goes down, you lose traffic for that period of time. It's just the lights are out. So again, what's happening is, no issue with the website loading up. The website's still loading up. Your data, your hosting service, GoDaddy's still throwing the web pages to me, but it's just as the page is trying to ping Omniture or Adobe or Google, no one's home. So we're not capturing the fact that the pages are being loaded on the computer. You can only start assessing traffic at the point in time in which you load the code. So if, I've been in business for a year and I'm a nonprofit and I haven't had Google code on there and I just put it on tomorrow, then I don't have any data until starting tomorrow. Again, just because somebody clicked on the PDF file and it registers as an event doesn't mean that it downloaded successfully, so keep that in mind. And then also another issue that occurs from time to time is you might have forgot to tag a certain page, and therefore you might be looking at your report and saying, hey, how could a person get from page A to page C without going through page B? That makes no sense. And it could be you forgot to put the code on page B, and therefore that's the problem. So you just need to make sure you got all your pages tagged. So where is the code typically? So again, you can view source, which we had talked about in the SEO chapter, correct? So we talked about viewing source. So on that page, just right click and do view page source. And then basically, typically, you could either do a Control F and search for Google, because most websites do have Google Analytics on there, or you can just scroll typically to the bottom of the page and you'll see right there is my chunk of code, the Google Analytics JavaScript code, and you can see that the actual account number for Rhonda's website is 4637465-1. And that's as simple as it is. So when you sign up for Google Analytics, Google will give you this chunk of code and they will say, copy it on every page. Now, typically what they'll do now is they'll say, copy it in the header section at the top. But until about 2 years ago, they used to tell you to copy it at the bottom right before you close out the body section. And the main reason they used to do that, guys, is because they did not want it to interrupt with the user experience. So, in case there was an issue with bandwidth, and you didn't want it to hang because it was having a hard time pinging Google. So therefore, Google said put it at the bottom of the page. But as we know today, there are no issues with bandwidth, really. So it's like throw it at the top, and that way we won't miss a lot of those quick bounces. Because definitely when it's at the bottom of the page and you got a quick bounce, you're probably going to miss a lot of those hits because the code's all the way at the bottom of the page. You put it at the top of the page, you're more likely to capture even a quick bounce because it's going to trigger something and fire something off to Google like almost immediately. Now, the other thing I want to make you guys aware, obviously it does not look like a lot of code, right? It's like, oh my God, how can we get all this data with so little JavaScript code? Well, the vast majority of the code is actually hidden in a common file, which is the Google Analytics ga.javascript file. And if you highlight that, put that in your browser, you'll see all the code actually. And the reason they want to do that is because if they're changing the way they're going to capture something, or they want to start capturing something new, they don't want to come back to all the Google Analytics accounts and say, oh, you got to recopy all this code on all your pages. They just make the change in a single file that we all access. Okay, so here is the issue now with double-click reporting. So again, double-click, which we'll talk about shortly, is the ad serving network owned by Google. So they serve up about 65% of the ad calls for your display banner ads. So if you are basically working with DoubleClick and having them do banner advertising for you, and you're looking at your DoubleClick report, and DoubleClick is charging you for, let's say your ad got 100 clicks and they're trying to charge you for 100 clicks. Hey, 100 people clicked on your ad. And then you go and look at your Google Analytics account and you're looking at people who came to your website through DoubleClick. You might only see 90 people, let's say, and you're thinking, okay, why is DoubleClick charging me for 100 clicks when I'm only seeing 90 making it to my website? Well, here's the problem. Part of it is, again, the quick bounce sort of issue. Think how many times you guys click on ads and you might hit the back button really fast again. So that same issue here. So I just want you to know you will never see your DoubleClick reports matching up with the Google Analytics reports. So if you want to find out more, I've got a blog entry on that, and I'm giving you the link right here. Again, nothing about our tracking is perfect. So again, if I want to look at the number of returning visitors, again, that is totally going to be underrepresented because a third of you guys delete your cookies every month. So you could be returning, but I don't know it because you deleted your cookie, and I don't know that you were there actually last week. You could have your security settings turned on so that, again, third-party cookies aren't even allowed, for example. Again, keep in mind the tools measure browsers, not individuals. So here's another issue. I could be sitting down at the computer, tooling around on your website. I could get up real quick to go get some water, and my wife walks by and thinks, oh, that looks interesting. She sits down and continues browsing. Well, it's not the same person. It's two different people. But again, it's going to be viewed as one individual, basically. So nothing is perfect here with respect to our measurements. Again, now that we've reviewed the most common methods to capture clickstream data, we need to keep a few things in perspective. I know I've already said it. The tools are used to track individuals, actually track browsers, not people. Firewall, security settings, anti-spy software constantly get in the ways of the analyst's efforts to collect the data. Also keep in mind that each vendor has developed their own optimized methodology to capture and process data. So again, when you look at average time on the website for Google Analytics, and you also have Adobe Site Catalyst code on your page, they are not going to match. All of these vendors do things slightly differently. So again, just be consistent in what you're doing and what tool you're using to measure things with. And again, we talked a little bit about fraud, click fraud. So again, AdWords tracks clicks, Analytics tracks visits, right? So we talked about that before. So again, on your AdWords side, keep in mind, Google is removing those fraudulent clicks. So you're not seeing them. On the Analytics side, you are going to see them coming in to your website. So for a refresher, again, you can go back to section 6B, the last two slides presented for the facts on fraud.